Hi, Judge Andrew Napolitano here, and you are on Freedom Watch with my guest and colleague and good friend, former White House press secretary and co-host of The Five here on Fox News Channel at 5 p.m. every day, Dana Perino. Dana, isn't it astonishing who won't be at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland? Some very important people, the most important of whom you once worked for.
Yep.
What do you think, and why not?
Well, you're talking about George W. Bush.
Right.
Interesting, it's not just this convention that he's not going to. He didn't go to the last convention
I
either,
remember that.
in 2012. And that was his decision as he was ending his presidency. He had told all of us, I'm not going to seek the Klieg lights.
Right.
I'm not going to be on stage. I'm not going to be a former president that meddles in the politics.
But Bush is going
No
this
Bush
time.
is going to this convention.
Is it because of the way Donald Trump treated Jeb?
I don't think it's just about Jeb. I think it was early on that they felt that this is a candidate they could not endorse and that they also are not campaigning against. And I think that that gets a little bit lost in any criticism of George W. Bush for not going, is that he's also not actively campaigning against him.
Well, we know he's not campaigning against him because he's campaigning for a lot of down-ticket people like John McCain and Kelly Ayotte and members of the Senate who are concerned about their races.
Yeah, I knew. I talked to him about that in, I think it was May, and he said that he was going to be going out on the campaign trail for a significant number of Senate candidates because he believed that the best way that he could help the Republican Party is to try to keep the Senate in Republican-controlled hands. It is a tough year for Republicans no matter what, because partly the map and the calendar and how many seats...
You're talking about Republicans in the Senate.
In the Senate,
It
right.
should be a good year for Republicans nationally, but Trump is not your typical or predictable candidate.
It is not easy when you have a candidate polling at around 29%, and you also know that, for example, Mitt Romney, he lost to Barack Obama by 5 million votes. There are about 7 million more Democrats than there are Republicans in the country, so the good news is, for those Senate candidates, there is polling that suggests at this point, in mid-June, that the Senate candidates that have very tough races, Ayotte, Portman, McCain, Blunt, Johnson. Toomey. Yeah, there's about 10 of them.
Right.
So far, their polling shows that they are sort of separated from the national ticket.
Okay, so how do they say, vote for me, whether you vote for Trump or not? How difficult is it to get people to go from Hillary Clinton, switch to the column, Pat Toomey, Kelly Ayotte, whoever we're talking about?
I think it's just very difficult to figure out how to do that. I don't know what they're going to say. I think it's also hard to say that I can't endorse Donald Trump, but I will vote for him. Some of the senators have said that. You're like, well, how do you thread that needle? That's very difficult. There's one thing that happens in presidential election years, which is the Democrats treat presidential election years like the Olympics. This is their
what do you mean?
This is their big event. The off-year elections, midterm elections, they don't really show up. That's why Republicans usually do better in midterm elections.
Okay, when you say Democrats, you mean Democratic voters. You don't mean the hierarchy.
Correct, and the voters. So usually what happens is you want to get as many Republicans or Democrats, depending where you are, to the polls because they often vote a straight ticket.
Are you getting a whiff of some efforts to deny Trump the nomination on the first ballot, sort of like we were getting a whiff of 2 months ago before he had wrapped it up?
I only see that on Twitter. I don't know of any concerted effort. Certainly nobody has called me and said, hey, do you want to get on board this train? I'm like, I think a lot of it is people trying to organize online. I think that there's one active group out of Colorado that is trying to see what they can do on the delegate front. I think it's a fool's errand. I'm sorry to say.
Okay.
I think it's going to be very difficult for them to do. He will be the nominee.
What is the best he can do for vice president? Should he have a running mate who will help him get elected or who will help him govern? When he was talking about Gingrich, I thought to myself, now he's making sense. Gingrich would be an ideal means of communication between the White House and the Congress.
Exactly.
I don't know that Newt is a very attractive candidate for Trump.
I think it's unlikely that any vice presidential candidate can expand the map for a presidential candidate. So
unless you're going to bring in a unique state. Certainly if Kasich ran with Trump, Hillary would give up on Ohio.
Well, and that would be something.
Yes.
Because Ohio's such a prize. That's a good point. But do you know that Pew studies have shown that only about 1% of the voting public decides on who they'll vote for president based on the vice presidential candidate?
Right.
Now, what could a vice presidential candidate do for Donald Trump that would be in favor for him? One, it could calm people down. Okay, so Republicans who are maybe shaky on Trump, if they see a vice presidential choice that they like and respect,
right.
they might say, okay. Now, he could also try to expand the map, so he might choose somebody from a particular demographic. I don't typically like that because I think that the most important thing you can choose in a vice presidential candidate is somebody you think can govern and also somebody that will be a good partner for you.
Do you think that any of his former competitors, I'm not talking about Chris Christie, but the ones that he trashed,
Very hard.
would say yes? John Kasich says no under any circumstances.
I think it is very difficult it's a difficult job to turn down.
Right.
If the candidate calls you, it's hard to say no.
But it wouldn't be a typical vice presidency under a Donald Trump. It would either be
all of this is unconventional.
It would either be a pawn or a major conduit for communicating to the Congress. One extreme
Or you
or
know
the
what
other.
else it could be like? Do you ever watch that show Veep?
No.
Okay, so in the show Veep, Julia Louis-Dreyfus is the vice president. And every day when she comes into her office, she says, "Hi, did the president call?" And they say, "No." And she goes, "Okay." And he's never once called her. So vice presidents work in different ways. Vice President Biden, I think, has been very good for Obama because he knew the Congress and he's well-liked, and that was good. I think
he also wasn't a threat to Obama.
Correct. He doesn't run for office. That's the same with Dick Cheney.
Yes.
And the difficult thing for Trump choosing somebody that he ran against is that he knows they have political ambition that he thwarted.
Dana Perino, what a pleasure.
We could talk all day.
We could, to sit in this environment.
They only give us a few minutes.
Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome. Thank you.
All the best. From New York, defending freedom whenever they let us. See you next time, America.